3 decent ranks, and I'm gonna show you exactly what I studied from. One list, that's it. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Himani. I did my MBBS from Maulana Azad Medical College. So first of all, a disclaimer. So I already made a detailed video on preparation strategy, eligibility and basic exam structure of UPSC CMS, and another detailed one on the personality test of CMS. But in either of these, I did not mention any specific sources. Now there is a reason behind that. See, sources are personal. I use some, but honestly, multiple others are doing a good job as well. And what worked for me might not work for you, and what is working for you right now might be the one you should be continuing with. But since a lot of you asked me for my specific study resource list, I'll be covering all that in this video. I'll be giving a complete list for all the resources that are used for my preparation for NEET PG, INI CET as well as CMS. Now, if you're someone who is just starting off with your preparation, in this video you will get a clear idea which resource is good in which particulars. And if you are someone who was already preparing but maybe a particular source is not working for you, you will get really good alternatives from this video. And also, I'll be sharing how exactly I prepared along with all the tips and tricks no one really shares. So let's start with the video now. So first of all, let me share the best study resource anyone can ever have. It is your own notes. Now it doesn't matter whether you made them from a book, you made them during a lecture, or you made them from a particular coaching institute. It just should be yours. Now if you are not making the whole notes yourself and you are using someone else's notes, for example of a coaching institute or of a senior, even then the notes should have your personal touch. Now how would we do that? So you have to add some points in it. Like whenever you solve questions, you will find some points that are not in your notes, but they are repeatedly being asked. Or maybe a recent update, or maybe something else. So when you add those points in your notes, now those notes are officially yours. Now your notes are different from your batchmate or your friend. In my opinion, until and unless you don't feel that the notes have your personal touch, you won't feel like studying from them. So now answering the next question, did I use a coaching platform or not? So yes, I did. Now I started preparing in my second year, basically fourth semester. तो उस टाइम पे there were two kinds of platforms, offline and online. And offline में बस DAMS और DBMCI था, and online में Marrow and Prepleader था. Now I personally chose online platforms. Now there are two kinds of people. Some are like me, who want to study at their own pace and who might want to watch a lecture 2 or 3 times if they did not get it right, who do not want to waste time and watch the lecture at 2x. I personally used to watch at 1.5x, but some people prefer watching at 2x. And मुझे personally, I did not like deadlines for tests. I wanted to do tests also at my own pace. And also I wanted to study alone. मैं library भी नहीं जाती थी because I studied better alone. So if you're like me, you should go for online coaching platforms. Now offline, if you're someone who likes studying in a lecture hall with other people around you, who likes discussion with the faculties along with that, and if you're someone who thinks that you will keep procrastinating in case of tests and you want specific deadlines for your test, you should prefer offline coaching. And now there is a middle ground also. If you want to study alone and you don't want any deadlines, but you still want to have discussion with the faculty, you can go for live lectures. That is I think available in Cerebellum. So that gives you an edge. मेरे time पे Cerebellum नहीं था. Then online maybe I had two options, Marrow and Prepleader. Now which one did I choose and why? For that we have to understand what is better in which platform. Since now Cerebellum is also there and I use some parts of Cerebellum in my drop year, so I would be including that also. Marrow is detailed. Marrow has long detailed videos. So if you have time, you should choose Marrow. I started my preparation in fourth semester. I had a lot of time, तो इसलिए मैंने Marrow choose किया था. But if you're someone जिसको crisp notes पसंद है, you don't want that detailed long notes, then you should go for Prepleader. But one word of caution is one subject, that is medicine, and medicine itself is very vast, and some topics like cardiology are anyways difficult to understand. Now in such a subject, if you go for detailed explanations, detailed discussions, of course you will improve your clinical skills, you will improve your knowledge, but for exam point of view, you also need to remember stuff. And in that respect, I did not think Marrow's medicine was up to the mark. If you want to have knowledge, if you want to study for knowledge only at this point of time, go for Marrow. If you're understanding it, that's very good. But personally, when I started studying from Marrow, I started with cardiology and I watched the lectures I think 3 times and still I could not grasp it because cardiology वैसे ही बहुत vast है. And when I used to study those details, तो एक बार समझ में आ जाता था and next day I used to forget everything. So I would prefer that for medicine, if you're studying from an exam point of view, you should go for prep ladder. So in prep ladder, Deepak Marwa sir takes these extremely difficult topics and he explains them in such a simplified way that it starts feeling like a cakewalk. So I would highly recommend prep ladder for medicine if you're not getting a grasp on Marrow's medicine. If you're understanding it, if you're good with it, well and good. And cerebellum मैंने post MBBS use किया था only for BTR. Now I used BTR notes, but again, as I just mentioned, I added my personal touch. I added a lot of points in BTR. Now BTR is very concise, very concise. So अगर उसमें अपने points add नहीं करोगे, that might not be sufficient. So I added a lot of points and that made it somewhat detailed. Now let's talk about test series now. Marrow has the best test series and question bank. Why? First of all, their questions are very tricky. And secondly, उनके जो explanations होते हैं, they are too good. Because they are, again, since Marrow is famous for details, so इनके जो questions के explanations होते हैं, उनमें भी they are very detailed. They will not just tell you why a particular answer is correct, they will write the whole concept in explanation. And that too, as such, copy paste from a standard textbook. Also, the images in Marrow are very good. Ultimately, वो आंसर का एक्सप्लेनेशन पढ़ने के चक्कर में you will be reading the whole concept and that too from a standard textbook. But there is one thing, Marrow does not have any kind of discussion of his test series, even though the explanations are very good. But कभी कभी ऐसा पढ़ने का मन नहीं करता है. And it feels like कि बस कोई आके समझा दे. And at that point, Marrow lags behind. In that case, cerebellum is good. Cerebellum के मैंने कुछ tests try किए थे which are actually free. तो उनके जो discussions होते थे वो भी free होते थे and I used to watch them and they helped a lot. Then Prep Ladder also has started live discussions of their tests and those discussions also I had watched and those were also very good. And DAMS के भी INI set and NEET predictor series होती है which is actually free, so I used to solve them and also the free tests of DAMS. And of most of them there were discussions on YouTube, live discussions basically, and I used to watch them. I did not prefer to watch them live because again I wanted to watch at 1.5x or 2x. मैं बाद में देखती थी after it has been recorded. But basically in Marrow, ultimately you are studying from a standard textbook. All the explanations are from standard textbook. So you are reading it. And in the discussions of Cerebellum, Prep Ladder and DAMS, you are understanding it. Someone is explaining it to you. You are listening. So it helps with boredom. You don't get bored in all this. There is one more plus point in Cerebellum and Prep Ladder's test series is that you can pause the grand test. Marrow, of course, they are trying to simulate the real exam and that is a good thing. That's why they are not giving any option to pause their tests. But for me personally, it used to get very difficult to even start a test knowing that I won't be able to pause it for 3.5 hours and I would not be able to do anything for that time. Marrow के test start करने से पहले मुझे पूरा prepare होके बैठना पड़ता था. While Cerebellum and Prep Ladder मैं ऐसे ही start कर देती थी. If I'm just getting bored, I used to start the test. 50, 60, however many questions मेरा करने का मन करता था, I used to do them and then I used to pause. Because ultimately you need to practice questions. That is the main thing. तो ये करते करते मेरे काफ़ी questions हो जाते थे. Then the next question, how frequently should you give mock tests and when should you start? Well, first of all, you should start now. Because एक question से एक concept समझ में आ रहा है. So if you are doing 180 or 200 questions, you are learning 180 or 200 concepts. So you should start giving mocks early on. But initially, of course, frequency कम होगी. Near to the exam, I used to give at least 1 mock in a week. कभी कभी 2 भी हो जाते थे. But ऑनेस्टली मुझे मॉक टेस्ट देना बहुत पसंद था. आई यूज टू एंजॉय दैट. एग्जाम से कितना पहले, अबाउट 3 months बिफोर, यू हैव टू स्टार्ट दिस फ्रीक्वेंसी दैट यू आर गिविंग अ मॉक टेस्ट एवरी वीक. नाउ इफ यू आस्क मी वेदर यू शुड गिव द मॉक टेस्ट टाइम्ड और अनटाइम्ड, आई मीन 3 घंटे के लिए एक साथ बैठना चाहिए या फिर पॉज कर करके करना चाहिए, इट्स अगेन योर पर्सनल प्रेफरेंस. मैरो में ऑप्शन नहीं था, सो आई यूज टू सिट फॉर द होल 3 hours or 3.5 hours depending on whether I'm giving the grand test of INI-CET or NEET PG. And prep ladder and cerebellum में sometimes I used to do it in one sitting and sometimes I used to pause the test in between. So it's again your personal preference. And how to analyze the wrong answers. अब ये बहुत important है. Everyone tells you कि wrong answers को analyze करो, but no one tells you exactly how to do that. So what you have to do is that for every grand test you give, you have to categorize your wrong answers in a few categories. Now the categories are, first category is facts. That means that in this question I got wrong because this was just a fact, no concept, just a fact which I did not know. Second thing is concept. So if you got a question wrong because that particular concept of yours was weak, in that case then and there you have to read the concept. पूरा एनालिसिस खत्म होने के बाद अगर सोचोगे कॉन्सेप्ट पढ़ने का, you won't be able to do that. At least I used to procrastinate that. मैं जब भी कोई मेरा wrong answer because of concept होता था, I used to study it then and there before moving on to the next question. Now the third one is recall. कि ये मैंने पढ़ा था but I could not recall when the question was put in front of me. My concepts are all right, I knew it, but I just could not recall it. Silly mistake, that is the fourth category. And then the final category is others. Now in this you will include those wrong answers which do not fit in any 4 of the other categories. For example, I know a concept, it was not a recall error, I could recall everything, but when that question was put in front of me, somehow I could not apply that concept. So that used to go in the others column. And to count these you can use tally marks, ताकि जैसे जैसे क्वेश्चन देखते जाओ वैसे वैसे you will put a line and you will know how many questions are in each of the categories. Now this analysis you have to do for all your grand tests. No matter whether you are doing the grand test of marrow, prep ladder, cerebellum, DAMS, anyone, you have to do this. And then you have to keep analyzing with each grand test what all mistakes are getting increased and what all mistakes are getting decreased. And you have to modify your strategy accordingly. रिकॉल एरर्स ज़्यादा आ रहे हैं, स्टार्ट स्टडिंग मोर. कॉन्सेप्चुअल एरर्स ज़्यादा आ रहे हैं तो कॉन्सेप्ट तो साथ के साथ ही पढ़ लेने. सिली मिस्टेक्स ज़्यादा आ रही हैं, पे मोर अटेंशन while solving the questions. So in that way you will keep on improving, and that is the key. You don't need to get all the answers correct in one go. You just need to keep on improving. Now previous year papers. Now since I told you कि 3 months before the exam you have to give at least 1 mock per week. So if you can, give 1 mock and 1 previous year paper in 1 week. But if you can't, at least give alternatively. Like एक week में 1 mock test देना है, next week में एक previous year paper करना है. And 1 paper would take your whole day because you have to analyze in detail. Don't go lazy in analysis. Now how many previous year papers I did? So I did previous 3 years papers of INI-CET, and since INI-CET happens twice a year, so I basically did 6 papers of INI-CET. And for NEET I did the previous 7-year papers, and for CMS I did previous 5-year papers. But I would highly recommend you to do previous 10-year papers for NEET and CMS. Now ये सब करते करते sometimes the things would feel very monotonous and you will get bored. उस situation में क्या करें? Because let's say only 3 months are left for your exam and you can't really take a rest. So in that case there are YouTube videos on the channel of Cerebellum, Prep Ladder and Marrow. Different YouTube videos, and they are very good, they are very engaging. I used to binge watch them. And you can do that too, they are very interesting. Especially Prep Ladder का LRR की जो videos होती है, last rapid revision, that is great. I used to watch them, and I think I watched at least medicine and pathology twice. They were so good. Now addressing one more important question, is only VTR enough? It is not. Big no. If your concepts are not good, पहली बात तो VTR याद ही नहीं होगा. अगर concepts अच्छे हैं तभी VTR समझ में आएगा, तभी VTR याद होगा. Otherwise you will just be reading. उसमें इतना ज़्यादा information इतनी concise form में है. You will not remember anything if you don't already know the concept. Secondly, you have to add your own points there so that to make it somewhat detailed. So end पे एग्जाम के बिल्कुल पास रिविजन करने के लिए BTR is very good. But if you have a lot of time left, I would not say just go for BTR like in your 4th or 5th semester. You should not just rely on BTR. Study from detailed sources as well. Again, the main thing is concepts. Now, what all points should you add in your notes? Let's say you did an MCQ. It was a new thing to you. You did not know the answer. So in all these coaching platforms, they tell you how many people have got that answer correct. So if it is more than 30%, that is probably relevant. Try to memorize it then and there. If you think you cannot memorize it at all, add it to your notes. But I would prefer that try memorizing it. And let's say that same question comes in front of you after a few days and again you can't recall. In that case, that question has appeared twice. More than 30% people have got it correct, you have not, and you were not able to memorize it from the previous time. In that case, that point would go in your notes. So one more thing I want to highlight here, that I have tried to explain the sources based on what all I used in the last 6 months of my preparation. But if you have time, of course you will be studying from textbooks. If you are in your first, second, third year, at least try studying from textbooks. But if you are closer to the exam, that is when these sources are actually very useful. Of course, these are useful in your early MBBS years also, but supplemented by textbook, because again, you need to gather the knowledge. You need to have your concepts strong. Now, summarizing all the sources that I used, you are in your MBBS days and you have time, go for Marrow. It has long videos with detailed notes, and the tests and question banks are also best in Marrow with best and detailed explanations. Previous year papers also have detailed explanations there, and those would be very useful for you in the long run. Then if you want crisp notes or you think you don't have much time, go for Prep Ladder. I personally did only free tests from Prep Ladder and watched all the discussions, all the test discussions. LRR videos are very good in Prep Ladder. Rapid revision is also very good of Prep Ladder. And I also did medicine from Prep Ladder. Then Cerebellum, I did BTR, but I added my own points, a lot of my own points. And I also did all the free tests from Cerebellum. Then DAMS again, I did all the free tests and test series, and I also watched all the explanation videos. Now the final takeaways from this video. Remember, less is more. You don't need to study from every study resource there is. Just trust your study resource, pick one, whichever feels best for you, and keep revising from it. You need that photographic memory. Secondly, practice as many questions as you can. You will learn more than you think. Each question gives you one concept, and question practicing is very important. The more questions you practice, the more strong your concepts become. And you might think that first you need to study and then you will solve the questions, but it's not like that. You need to study, and side by side you have to solve the questions, because questions are also teaching you. Just trust your preparation, don't panic, don't get distracted, have faith in yourself, and you will pass with flying colors.